Well, hi, and welcome to Personal Bankruptcy Canada. I'm Wayne Kelly, and today, joining me on the show, I've got Sandy Lyons, who is a trustee with bankruptcy at Bromwich and Smith in Alberta. Thanks very much for being here.
Well, happy to be here.
So we're going to talk about the really important topic of repaying your debt, and what are the steps to make this happen. First off, when do you know that you have too much debt?
Well, I always say that's when you can't make your payments every month, when your income that you got coming in isn't allowing you to make your stated minimum payments on all of your credit cards or lines of credit or on your mortgage or your vehicle loan.
So is there an absolute first thing that you should do when it comes to tackling your debt?
Well, the first thing is to understand what you owe and how much you owe and where, and the interest rates involved that you're paying, and the type of contract you're in. If it's a secured contract, i.e. a car loan where the car has been pledged as collateral, or a credit card loan or a payday loan, what exactly are the fees and expenses you're being charged? Of course, knowing what your monthly expenses are in terms of what money you have that's going out and what money you have coming in as a family unit, be it if you're single or a family with a second income. It's very important to understand what resources you have available on a monthly basis to pay your debt.
Now, I know you work with a lot of people in the country and a lot of Albertans who are in financial difficulty, and they're needing a little bit of help. They're needing some advice. How many of them come in and actually know where they're spending their money?
Amazing number have some idea, but they don't know the precision. As I always say, that it's about knowing where the dollars are and the pennies and the dimes that are important. Well, I guess no longer pennies anymore, but you get the gist of it, is that having a good understanding of where the money's coming from and where it's going in the form of a budget would be very helpful, because without knowing exactly what you need to pay every month, you don't know if you have the ability to take on more debt and how that debt might look. And it's important also, of course, to understand what the interest rates are. No sense paying down debt that has a very low interest rate if you have something with a much higher interest rate that's taking and making you pay more interest than the other debt. It's about the wise use of credit as well.
Okay, so you do have to create some sort of a budget in order to get through this, right?
Yeah, it's important to know what you're spending monthly on your expenses, be it your mortgage payment, be it the rent that you pay, and then the more flexible type numbers that are involved, such as your utility usage. What's a normal utility bill for you? Of course, there's some variance with that. In the winter months, most people spend more on the utilities of electricity and heat, of course. And in the summer, there may be air conditioning, depending upon how hot the area is that you live in, to be able to live with the confines of your home, right?
Yeah. So there's a lot of different variants. Now, let's say you do get into a financial situation where you're having some trouble repaying these. Should you contact your creditors on your own? Is that ever a good idea?
It's always a great first step. If your creditors understand where you're at, you might be able to negotiate a reduction in interest rate if it's a debt that has an interest rate attached to it. And of course, there's also the options in some contracts to skip a payment. And maybe that's all you really need, is just a little bit of wiggle room to make matters work. But of course, it's a question of contacting the creditors in general and working out the arrangements. And sometimes that can become overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. So obviously it is a good idea then to make contact. Be honest about where you're at financially. I think that's good advice for most Canadians. Do you have some advice here on creating that repayment budget?
Well, it's about first being realistic about your budget. If, for example, you have some sort of habit, i.e. you smoke, you have the occasional beer, well, don't take that completely out of the budget, because let's face it, that's being unrealistic. It's being realistic about what the budget will be. If if you normally go on a holiday every year where you go camp at a lake, and you're saying, well, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to stay at home and not do that, or then be committed to that position. But if you're saying, well, yeah, I'll still go camping, well, you still have to have the money for the camping fees and the transportation costs to get there. So it's building those types of events in. At this time of year, we run into the Christmas season, of course, or holidays where an expectation of merriment and additional costs occur, gifts and whatnot. And of course, if you're going to build a budget that doesn't include that, you have to come up with some creative ways of dealing with those types of expenses otherwise, be it that you make your own Christmas gifts or give services in kind to your loved ones instead of an actual physical gift. If it's normally that you're trading something, with a value to it in terms of a gift, right?
And there are a lot of Canadians who really mean well, but they've just got into a bad situation, and they're having some tough times in actually the rebuilding of that budget in the repayment plans. If they can't do it by themselves, well, what are their options?
Well, if they can't do it by themselves, they can, of course, approach a debt repayment organization that will help them for a fee. Be very careful of those organizations because some of them have to be licensed, others do not. In Alberta, those types of organizations are governed by the Fair Trading Practices Act and collection and debt repayment regulations. And there are some do's and don'ts there. And Alberta, we do have a licensing process for those types of organizations. And it's important to know that you're dealing with a licensed organization if you're going to work with those types of entities. But of course, the biggest concern with those, other than for the Orderly Payment Debt Program, is that they're not necessarily going to cover all of the debt and not be able to, it's a negotiation on a one-by-one basis. And sometimes that can become unruly if there's a large number of creditors. Yes. So quite often, you see people with financial troubles turning to administrators of proposals or trustees to get some basic understanding of the do's and don'ts.
And that's exactly what you do, and that's a great place to start. There's so many different options. I learned so much from dealing and talking with people just like you, Sandy. I thank you very much for your advice here. Is there any final words that you want to share with people about the repayment of debt?
Well, the key is to know where your money's coming and where it's going, and come up with a realistic repayment plan. Don't overpromise. Make sure you've got some wiggle room, or Murphy room, as I like to call it, in your proposed payment plan, so that your creditors always know what's going to happen if you're going to do it on your own. But otherwise, great opportunity to sit down with a proposal administrator or someone with a credit negotiation firm that has some credibility, but do look for ones that are accredited and are licensed to do the service.
Terrific. Sandy, thank you very much for being on the show today.
You're welcome.
That's Sandy Lyons, who is a member trustee with Personal Bankruptcy Canada, and of course you can get all kinds of information there, personalbankruptcycanada.ca.